Caleb, when going over the season, how much do you kind of rely on or go to your leadership council and just kind of consult with them in terms of what to improve and stuff?
Yeah, I think, again, bottom line, we didn't achieve our goals this year. That's very disappointing, whether it's a point or whether it's 20 points. When you don't reach your goals, and you're in a club like we are with high standards and expectations, then we have to own the fact that we didn't have a good year based on our goals. So we own that. Now we have to make corrections, and to make corrections you have to reflect and evaluate things. What I can say is we're on the right track when you look at the end of the year. So that's a good thing. You know, it's easy to forget that. We're on the right track. As far as reflection and evaluation, yeah, that involves a lot of conversations. You can't reflect and evaluate unless you dissect and talk and communicate and, you know, get feedback.
What positions have you and Bez identified as key targets this offseason?
Yeah, I think, again, we need time to evaluate and reflect. I've said it, you know, we clearly didn't get enough production in certain positions in the attack. That's simple math. You know, if you don't get enough goals, usually goals are in line with points, believe it or not. So, you know, when you fall short in your goal production, you're going to not win as many games. And, you know, Lucas put up 12. You know, when you look at the number 9 position combined, you got pretty good production out of the two guys that played the lion's share of the minutes. Need to get more production out of the wingers. So I think, you know, if we got 10 more goals in those spots, that's at least 3-4 more wins, at least. You know, so for sure we need to look at those positions, and then we'll continue to evaluate, you know, our depth, because when you look at the 6-game stretch where we didn't get a point, we had a lot of depth pieces playing in the back line, and in hindsight, you know, those guys didn't get the job done when they were given the opportunity. And in my hindsight, I probably didn't put them in, you know, a position to succeed. We were playing a little bit too high, more open than maybe they were capable of. 2 of those games are at home. In the first 3, we gave up 11 goals in the first 3 games, and, you know, we had second and third string guys playing at the back line. Jonah was the only real starter playing consistently during that stretch. And yeah, you know, for me, we're playing Atlanta, we're playing DC, and we're at home, and, you know, I wanted to be on the front foot, press, attack. That's our game model, and, you know, I just don't think it put those guys at the back in a good position with a high line to succeed. So I probably could have been more pragmatic with our game plan, with the personnel, you know, that we had playing. But then also have to look at how can we keep executing the way we want to execute when we go to the number 2 and number 3 in the depth chart. You know, we have to evaluate, are we strong enough really when we have to, you know, play different guys. And in that case, I think it's a little bit of both, but clearly there were a few players that were given the opportunity in that stretch that really fell short and didn't perform very well. And you got to evaluate that, because if you're making that same mistake again and expecting a different, it's the old insanity, you know. So we might need to supplement a little bit some positions in terms of depth.
Looking back, is it as simple to say that the injuries derailed much of that, your guys' goals this year, or when you is it more than just? I mean, obviously that played a big part, no doubt. But do you think it's more than that, or was that the biggest cause of not getting where you wanted?
Yeah, I think those questions are always tricky because then I answer them and then everybody says I'm making excuses. And at the end of the day, I'm just, trying to solve the problem, right? And, I'm not an excuse guy. I'm a problem solver, and I'm the first one to look at myself. And, you have to, as a coach, be very objective in your reflection and your corrections all the time, really, that process. So I think we're going about that process, and I don't know that there's really, I personally don't think there's just one real reason when you don't succeed. But I do think, again, it's pretty simple. I said it. You look at where we fell short. We fell short in that stretch in the middle part of the year. And in evaluating that stretch, we had a lot of injuries. So that's not an excuse. We had a lot of injuries, and we had third string players playing in a couple positions. So is that anyone's fault? When you get to the third in a position, I don't know that your roster's ever deep enough for that, is what it is, right? We need to make sure we're not in the second and third, ideally, but then ultimately we need to evaluate, are we strong enough? And then we need to evaluate how can we stay healthy. And I'm evaluating, obviously, my game plans in those games as well to see how I can do better when we are playing different guys, because I think we fell short when we had to play different guys. And that's easy for me to just say, yeah, it's the injuries, that's not my fault. It's the roster, it's not my fault. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a combination of everything. And at the end of the day, my reflection is I could have put those guys in a better position, been a little bit more pragmatic, dropped my lines off a little bit, play the way, not necessarily the way I want to play, but, a way that suits the group we had playing. Not have them on the ball quite as much, not have them pressing in an open spaces quite as much, because 11 goals in 3 games, I don't care who's playing. It's not good enough. And I think if you look back after those 3 games, we played really well against Seattle. So I already made that correction after those 3. It's not something I just realized now. I made that correction. Seattle, we played much better. We were up 1-0 late in the game against a very good team. We were more organized. We were more compact. I throttled it down, but it didn't come. We lost 2-1. But as far as the play, it was much improved. We were tighter defensively, and then you'd never realize it, but we lost 1-0, 1-0 in the next 2 on the road. So we actually played a lot better as well defensively. So I already recognized that I probably had the team too opened up with the personnel we had.
How much does age come into what you guys want to do this offseason? I know you, and Bez has said this, I think you've said it too, that older teams win in MLS, but statistically you guys were the oldest team per games, I think. How much can you get younger? Do you want to get younger? How does that contribute to your offseason?
Yeah, I think, looking back, we probably felt like we could ride the wave of last year, 2020, with the group we had, the maturity of the group, the experience, and throw in a Bradley Molino and plug and play, and it didn't work out the way we wanted, right? And I'm not saying that Bradley didn't perform or Molino, it's his fault he got injured, but, in hindsight, it's easy to play hindsight United. The manager of Hindsight United always wins. And we probably should have maybe looked at possibly having a few younger guys in. And, I think it just ended up being the perfect storm where in that stretch we had international duty, we lost guys, and we had a lot of injuries, and we just weren't quite prepared. When Giassi was out, Bradley was also injured, several times. So it ended up being a good thing because Miguel got an opportunity and grabbed it. So sometimes things play out for a reason, but I think the bottom line is, you asked, did injuries derail us? Really, not getting a couple results derailed us. You have to be able in a 6-game stretch to get one win. And we got one win, we'd be in the playoffs. And it's just crazy, to think that most years, actually, the points we got, we would be in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, it's bottom line business, and it doesn't matter. We have to find a way, and I've been a part of a lot of MLS seasons, and I know how it goes. I've missed the playoffs 3 times by 1 point, so on the last day. So that's why it's the first message I give my team every single year, that every point matters and it adds up. And I tell them we're going to need everybody because there's going to be injuries, and this isn't something that I'm new to. I know how it goes. It's a very cruel league in terms of the margins and in terms of using your depth, not having enough depth. There's always injuries. And it usually comes down, no matter what, where everybody's about the same, pretty much, at least in the pack, And, Red Bull's form, unfortunately, as good as ours was even better than ours at the end of the year, or we're probably in. So these are all the things that, you look back and go, but we shot ourselves in the foot in that 6-game stretch. So that's what I keep going back to, we got to get one more win, 2 more wins, 4 points, in that stretch, no matter who we have in. But I'm not going to put myself through that same stretch again and make the same mistakes. So we need to look at the roster, our depth. We need to look at the tactics. We need to look at the injuries. We need to look at how many guys we're losing on international duty. All that's going to be evaluated. We need to look at the culture and, some things that chemistry-wise, how do we freshen that up? How do we continue to cultivate new leadership, and empower guys and give ownership and, so some of those team dynamics, we can freshen up for sure. And all those things will be discussed and talked about and changed and corrected. And I'm very confident we're going to bounce back in a big way. And the other thing is we can't forget the positives, That's a part of the reflection. There needs to be an understanding of the good stuff that we did, And at the end, we showed that we're on track and that we don't have to make a ton of changes. Outside of that, we can't forget we won Campeones Cup. That's a trophy. That was a goal. So that's a positive. The opening of new training grounds, a big positive. The closing of this stadium was a positive. The opening of the new stadium and moving forward, that stadium is going to be a massive positive. It took us some time to kind of get into a rhythm of being in there and winning in there and that feeling. I think we got that going at the end of the year. So that'll be a positive. So it's important to make sure you keep that in perspective. It's not all negative, when you don't achieve your goals. But also we can't just think it's going to just, without any further introspect, that it's just going to automatically be like the end of the year.
You look at the end of the year, how hard is it to see that your mission and your vision for this team started coming true just a little too late that last month in October of this is where we were supposed to be throughout the season, and it just happened a little late and not when we needed it to, like that 6-game stretch?
Yeah, it's bittersweet because it makes it harder and it makes it easier. It makes it harder because you were that close. You were playing extremely well. I kept thinking in my head, oh, we won the last 3 games in a row. I mean, so 3 games prior to that, it's like we won 3 games in a row, and that makes it harder because you're like, we did everything we could do to get in. But it also makes it easier because that you're on track, and you can honestly, in your reflection, see a lot of bright spots and hope and a lot of signs that, yeah, that last part was why we won a championship. We were moving the ball well, sharing the ball. Everybody was playing with a chemistry. We were defending as a team, and you could visibly see we were balanced. We were scoring goals. We had a good defensive, kind of organization and presence and balance. So it was all working, and it's great to be able to, even though you miss it, to go, there it is, and that's easier for your guys. That's easier for everyone. But it still makes it harder because we don't like not achieving our goals, and that's the bottom line.
Just want to go back to the positives real quick. You mentioned during the season when we asked you about new training facility, new stadium, you said, I'll reflect on it towards the end of the season about what that meant. What did those positives collectively mean to you? Have you had a chance to think about them that way or not yet?
Yeah, I think you're going to really see even more so next year, just, again, the training ground, the day-to-day environment that these players are going to be in, and the stadium, that presence. We had so much change last year, and change isn't easy. There's a reason people buy houses and stay in them. They buy their cars and stay in them, and people wear the same outfits every week. And, we're all creatures of habits, and, it's a little thing, but it's a big thing to change your training ground and your stadium in the same year. And I think it took us some time just to feel comfortable, and, again, I'd say we had it sorted at the end. But it just felt a little bit weird and strange being in a new environment at first. And in talking to players already, we've had 2 days of players meeting, they all said that same thing, that it was like a little bit of a weird feeling at first. Excitement, but also, no feelings and a little more pressure. And those are just weird things that you have to manage. So I feel like we're going to really hit the ground running this next year because there's nothing new. And we can build a lot off last year and the positives. But that's the best stadium in the league, in my opinion. And I do want to thank the supporters, their loyalty. They had that place rocking. And I'm glad we're able to get them quite a few wins at the end of the year. Disappointed that we dropped a few. Next year, we want to make it the most difficult place to play in the league. They're a big part of that. And hope everyone will buy season tickets and, feel that that's an important place and a more important club to support in this city. And disappointed that we weren't able to give them a playoff game and, defend our trophy. But I want to thank the fans for their support. And in the future, I can guarantee we're going to put some more trophies in the trophy case.
I want to stick with Lower.com field really quick. When you played at a lot of different places and been a part of different atmospheres. What makes that atmosphere unique at Lower.com field?
Yeah, I think it's the perfect size, in my opinion. We've been in a lot of stadiums that are too big, or in some cases maybe even too small, but it's the perfect size, and it has for me, the ideal grade in terms of, being every seat's good and it's on top of you, and some stadiums that are, the grade of the stands is it's too open, and so I like that the fans are on top of you, that you feel them, that you hear them, you see them, even their eyes. Like I said, at first it felt like a little more pressure actually for the players, but you saw at the end we really thrived at home with our fans and dealing with that, and it was just very different than this stadium here, in terms of the grade, in terms of the scale of it. Obviously, the location downtown's awesome, and it has all the bells and whistles. I mean, it's a beautiful stadium. There's no, the ownership didn't spare any expense on this thing, and it's a beautiful place. And fortunately, at the end, we were able to put on a better show, and I thought we played really good football, in the last several games on that home pitch, where we were scoring goals and pushing and playing more like us, front foot football.
You talked about those positives, and it really does feel like with the closing of Historic Stadium, the opening of the new ones, Campeones Cup, there's been a transformation of this club over the last year. How does that help you going into an off season now, having the ability to, I don't want to use the word recruit, but this is a part of who the club's going to be going forward. Does that make it enticing to play for the Crew in a different way?
Yeah, I think every club I've been in, one of the best compliments I think that can happen is that you've raised the bar. And when you raise the bar, your reward for that good work is more work. And the expectation is increased. The standards are higher. And that's the best compliment, that any player, coach, president, whoever, we're all stewards of the clubs we work for. And as coaches and players especially, we know it's not forever. We're on the clock, and we want to leave a legacy and raise the bar. And we did that in 2020, and obviously we didn't do that in 2021, in terms of enough, in terms of goals and standards. So next year we want to make sure that we maintain that standard, championship standard, and put more trophies in the trophy case. And we understand the responsibility.
Yeah.
And we created that, right? Mm-hmm. So you never want to be in a club where it's acceptable when you fail. You never want to be in a club where it's acceptable just to make the playoffs even, We could have made the playoffs, right? There are a lot of teams that do make the playoffs. Next week, there'll be a handful of teams that are out. Is that good enough? Did they have a better year than we did because they got in by an extra point? I would say, if we got in, it wouldn't have been good enough to lose the first game. So our standards are very high. So when you fall short, you fall short. It doesn't matter. For me, the playoffs is not enough. But the playoffs, unfortunately, didn't happen, so that didn't give us the chance. That's what pisses me off.
We just got a couple of things. You wanna close this out, sorry.
Yeah, two things to wrap up. When you're making decisions at winger, Pedro's a guy that showed a lot of versatility, and when you guys really suffered was when Milton was out. Do you look at Pedro as a guy who maybe can split time a little more between left back and winger?
Yeah, you saw, obviously we played in both spots. I think you saw that he was better at winger and Milton was better at left back. So ideally, we see Pedro as a winger. But it's nice that he is versatile enough to play left back. And does he become our depth piece there? Obviously, we also have to, look at Milton and, get the deal done and figure that all out as well. So he's going to continue to be an important piece, Pedro. And when I say we needed more out of our wingers, that's bottom line, right? You just look at production. I think in the end, Pedro and Derek were playing really well. And you could argue, actually, Derek had one of his best years of his career. People forget, he's kind of been an off and on starter in this league, and, he became, a real presence and got 2 assists in the last game. He chipped in goals late in the year, same as Pedro. So, but, we did fall short in that spot, bottom line. And we need to find ways to get more goals. Otherwise the margins are too tight. It's important to score goals to win games, and we're always going to get our goals out of our front four, our 9, 10, and our wingers. So Pedro will be a key piece. Derek will be a key piece. But we need more than that. That's why we signed Molino. And unfortunately, Molino wasn't able to really take our attacking group to that next level that we thought he would bring because of his injuries.
One more, do you have a minute?
At the forward spot, and Miguel's only played a handful of games still, but the production he was at,
Yeah.
is a big part of this offseason, trying to figure out giving the minutes both he and Jossie deserve. And is that even possible with the way you guys play?
Yeah. We just met with Miguel today. Those are fun meetings, even though tough year, but he's a guy that he earned it, right? And you always have to earn it. and his production and his season, and even, I would say, his form as a starter at the end of the year. You know, because he started as a guy that could just go in and find a goal. And then he got rewarded for that as a starter and didn't look comfortable as a starter, you know, and then kept being comfortable off the bench. But then late in the year, he became comfortable, in my opinion, as a starter. And it's different. It's very different. And he continued to improve and produce. And I told him now he has to take the next step, which is to be a consistent starter that's scoring goals where everybody knows you now. And actually the defenders are worried about you and not underestimating you, you know, so that next year for him, that next jump is going to be key. Is he going to start over Giassi? That depends on him. I think he can, yes. Can Giassi start over him? It depends. I like the competition. I think we needed more competition this year. You know, we needed guys to have attention that if they didn't play well, they might not be in. I think that got too comfortable at times in certain positions where they were just handed jobs, or in some cases didn't perform and were handed it again because we had no other guys to put in. But we need to keep our top guys performing. The best way to do that is with competition. So I see Miguel and Giassi both as starting players now. I really do. Now, that could change the more I see Miguel start games, but he's going to be given opportunity. And, you know, Giassi has more of a body work of performing game in, game out, year in, year out. But based on what I saw at the end of the year, Miguel can be a starting player for us and a guy that certainly scores goals in this league. And, yeah, can we look at maybe getting them both on the field, certain structure or system changes, you know, yeah, we can look at that as well. But it's going to be a fun competition, actually. And that's not saying Giassi didn't play well. It's just Miguel played that well. And you know what? When you aren't in and someone goes in there and does well, we want every player in this club to know that that might mean that actually you stay in there when you perform well. And that might mean if you're out that you might not get back in.
Caleb, any thoughts? Understand Aloy is up. What is it the intent to re-sign him, or can you say?
Yeah, absolutely. We feel like we have one of the better goalkeepers in the league, and he's proven that and earned it. And you talk about earning things. We want guys to know when they perform that they'll get rewarded. That's the culture that we want here. You perform, you get rewarded. You don't perform, you might not be here. It's that simple. You have to perform. And even if you perform last year, if you don't perform the next year, you know, we have to keep our standards high. We're not going to drop that. And so the only way we're going to ever win games is if players perform game in, game out. So Aloy is certainly a guy that we want to keep, and there are others, you know, that have earned that. And there are some guys that didn't perform this year that, you know, I don't think there'll be many, but there'll be a handful of guys that won't be back.